I think I was kind of an accidental academic. My academic career began in a very unconventional route. When I was in high school, I dropped out when I was 16. And I never went back to high school, so I ended up doing other things. And then when I was about 19, 20, I decided to go into university through an academic bridging program at the University of Toronto. So I managed to get into university that way, even though I was told I would never make it in university. I did do so even without having a high school diploma. And that piqued my interest in looking at education, particularly looking at the experiences of racialized communities within the education system, because what was difficult for me was growing up and being marginalized and having to experience day-to-day racism, which in many ways pushed me out of the educational system that I was in. And that later became a passion for me in some of the academic work that I did. My current research is examining the politics of empire and its effect on Muslim youth in Canada, what I call the 9/11 generation, and how they've been coping with dealing with things like racial securitization, stereotyping, how that affects their sense of citizenship and belonging within the nation, and also in turn how the nation constitutes this new generation of Muslim youth that are often seen as coded as jihadists or radicals or terrorists, and how these new ontological categories are being developed by the security community, and how in effect youth are resisting those categories. Another example of where my interdisciplinary focus comes in is also in examining literary works. I'm interested in Orientalism and how Orientalism has now filtered down from academic works and travel, sorts of literature, but also is now permeated popular fiction and in particular young adult readers. So there's a whole genre of books about young Muslim girls who live abroad and live these very, desperate lives that need to be understood by the white Western reader. And they're very Orientalist and very colonial in nature. And so I'm interested in understanding these texts from an anti-colonial framework. How do we develop transnational feminist reading practices that allow us to decolonize these texts and to show alternate understandings of Muslim women's lives? In other words, teaching students to be not just critical readers, but to critically engage the world. I think some of the challenges that I faced in my research, probably in the post-9/11 context, have to do with building trust in the communities that I'm researching. I'm doing research in the Muslim community among Muslim youth, and even though I'm a member of the community, because of the securitized nature of the society that we live in and the way that Muslim youth are being policed and observed and surveilled, there's a lot of difficulty in interviewing and getting people to be candid because they're afraid of how their responses might be taken up, who might be privy to it. And so it's brought up questions for researchers who are doing work on Muslim communities in the 9/11 context in terms of how we garner trust in the communities that we're researching so that they're comfortable to talk to us in the first place. And I've tried to work through that through really gaining trust with the participants, protecting their anonymity in various ways that they're comfortable with, and also being careful of what I do put out in my work. And that means not so much censoring, but it means being discerning in terms of the kind of information that's relevant to me as a researcher versus what might be exploiting those that I'm working with. And so that is a contemporary challenge, I think, in doing research in times of war and terror. I'm very influenced by the work of Paulo Freire. My background is in education, and his view on education was one that education should be something that is transformative. Education is a political act. I very much consider my classroom to be a political space and a space of politicization, and I think it's important in that context for students to do a lot of unlearning as well as the learning that they do, because there's a lot of miseducation that has taken place throughout their educational careers often, and particularly around the kinds of issues that I would deal with in my classroom around race, around colonialism, around various forms of social justice. And so when students have to address some of these issues, sometimes for the first time, there is some unlearning that often happens and a lot of unsettling that needs to take place. What drives me is the passion for social justice and working with students to help them also become more conscious and aware of what's going on in the world around them, so that they can be conscious actors, that they can take things further in their roles, whatever they are in life, and have an understanding, a critical awareness and understanding of how to see the world beyond just the superficial elements of what we see, but to be able to dig deeper and have an analysis of what's going on under the surface. And by being able to unpack what's happening around them, to see the world in that way, then hopefully they can become engaged actors no matter what they do in their lives. So I think that's what drives me and what inspires me.